Welcome back to the Jazz Pursuit. In this video, we're going to look at the jam session classic, There Will Never Be Another You. It was written in 1942 by H.Warren, originally for the musical Iceland, and harmonically, it perfectly moves around within the major scale. Before we get into it, make sure you like and subscribe below to stay up to date with new content and releases, and check out our Patreon page, linked below, for PDF handouts for all our videos, plus other extras. Right, let's get started. So, first off, let's look at the key bits of information. There Will Never Be Another You can be played many different ways, but the original is in 4/4 time and in the key of E flat major. The form is 32 bars divided into an A-B-A-C structure, with each section lasting 8 bars. First, we have the A section, followed by the B section, then the A section again, ending with the C section. Super! That's the key bits of information covered, and now let's get stuck into the harmony in the A section. So, as we said earlier, There Will Never Be Another You is in the key of E flat major, and we start on chord 1, E flat major 7, which lasts for 2 bars. We then have a 2-5-1 cadence, which takes us to the relative minor, C minor. This is a minor 2-5-1, and the 2 chord is D half diminished, the 5 chord is G7 flat 9, and the 1 chord is C minor 7. For a quick refresh on minor 2-5-1s, check out the video linked above. So we stay on our relative minor, C minor 7, for 2 bars, and then have another 2-5-1, and at this time it's to chord 4, A flat major 7. This is a major 2-5-1, and the 2 chord is B flat minor 7, the 5 chord is E flat 7, and the 1 chord is A flat major 7. Great! Let's quickly recap all of that, but with the piano. So, we start on chord 1, E flat major 7, and stay here for 2 bars. We then have a 2-5-1 which takes us to chord 6, or the relative minor, C minor 7. D half diminished is the 2 chord, G7 flat 9 is the 5 chord, and C minor 7 is the 1 chord. We then stay on C minor 7 for 2 bars before we have another 2-5-1, this time taking us to chord 4, A flat major 7. B flat minor 7 is the 2 chord, E flat 7 is the 5 chord, and A flat major 7 is the 1 chord. Super! Now let's keep going with the B section. So we're currently on chord 4, A flat major 7, and now we go back home to chord 1, E flat major 7. We do this through a backdoor 2-5 cadence. Our A flat major 7 chord turns minor and becomes the 2 in our 2-5. If A flat minor 7 is our 2 chord, this means our 5 chord is D flat 7, and we'd expect this to resolve down to G flat major 7. However, as the name suggests, a backdoor 2-5 resolves upwards or through the back door, and in this case, upper tone to chord 1 of our key, E flat major 7. Backdoor 2-5s are pretty common, and they enable us to resolve either upper tone or upper semitone from our 5 chord. Anyway, we're now on chord 1, and quickly visit chord 6, C minor 7, on our way to chord 2. But this isn't any old chord 2, this is a secondary dominant. A secondary dominant is exactly what the name suggests, the second dominant chord of the key. Let me explain in E flat major. The 5 chord, also known as the primary dominant chord, is B flat 7, and the secondary dominant is the 5 chord of the 5 chord, so in this case, F7. The main difference is that we'd usually expect the 2 chord in our key to be a minor 7 chord, but when it's a secondary dominant, it's a dominant chord. So, our secondary dominant chord F7 lasts for 2 bars, before it then turns minor and becomes a regular 2 chord, and the start of a 2-5-1 cadence which takes us home to chord 1, and the start of the second A section. F minor 7 is the 2 chord, to B flat 7 is the 5 chord, to E flat major 7. Cool! Now let's hear how the B section harmony sounds on the piano. Great! So at this point we repeat the A section that we've already learnt, and that leaves us with just the C section harmony left to learn. Before we look at that, let's first take a look at the melody. The melody of There Will Never Be Another You is pretty cool. As we know, it's in the key of E flat major, and the melody is made up of only the notes from the E flat major scale, with just one exception which we'll get onto later. So, we start on the 5th B flat, before then walking up through the major scale until we reach the 3rd G. We then jump up to the 5th B flat again, an octave higher than our starting note, before then falling to the 9th F, which quickly becomes the 3rd on our D half diminished chord. The next phrase begins by falling from the root of the G7 chord to the 3rd of the C minor 7 chord, E flat, before then walking up through the C minor pentatonic scale, again until we reach the same note we started on, E flat, only an octave higher, just like in the first phrase. We then fall down to the root of the C minor 7 chord, which then quickly becomes the 9th of our B flat minor 7 chord. There's some cool things already happening in the melody. Firstly, I like how it's organised. When the harmony is static, like in the first 2 bars of each line, the melody is full, and then when the harmony is moving, like the last 2 bars of each line, the melody is static. Also, whilst the first phrase walks through the major scale, the second walks through the pentatonic scale. However, both share the same distance between the highest and lowest point, which is an octave. The third cool thing is the note choice for the last 2 bars of each phrase. This has to be a pivot note that works well on both the 2 chord and the 5 chord, but rather than being the same, they're different. In the first phrase, it's an F, the 3rd of the 2 chord and the 7th of the 5 chord, and in the second phrase, it's a C, the 9th of the 2 chord and the 13 of the 5 chord. These subtle details are really cool and definitely need to be appreciated. Anyway, let's keep going and take a look at the melody in the B section. First things first, we need to tweak our backdoor cadence. Rather than having the whole 2-5 cadence, we're going to just have the 5 chord, D flat 7. You can still outline the 2 chord in your improvising and comping. Rather than having 4-bar phrases like the A section, the B section begins with 2 2-bar phrases. We start by outlining our A flat major 7 chord, as the melody falls through the 5th, 3rd, 2nd and root of the chord, before then rocking between the sharp 11 and 3rd of our D flat 7 chord. Because the melody so clearly outlines a sharp 11, we should tweak our chord symbol to reflect this. The second half of the line is very similar to the first half. We continue by outlining our E flat major 7 chord the same way that we outlined our A flat major 7 chord, by falling through the 5th, 3rd, 2nd and root, before then rising rather than falling into the next bar, which rocks between the 3rd and 4th of our C minor 7 chord. When we began the melody section, I said the melody is built exclusively using the notes of our E flat major scale, apart from one exception. Well, here's that exception, and it's on our secondary dominant chord. We start on the 13 of our F7 chord, before then falling down through our F major scale to the root. This outlines an A natural, which is the major 3rd of our chord, and the only note in the entire melody that isn't from our home key. We then finish the B section by going back and tweaking our A natural to an A flat to fit our F minor 7 chord. This is the 3rd of the 2 chord and the 7 of our 5 chord. Brilliant! Now let's hear the melody in time up until this point. Great! And now the good news is that next up is the second A section, which is a direct repeat of the first A section, so we can just copy our melody from earlier. This leaves us with just the C section left to learn. So let's dive in and first take a look at the harmony. The harmony in the C section begins the same way as the B section. We start on chord 4, A flat major 7, and then go home to chord 1, E flat major 7, using our backdoor 5 chord, D flat 7. But here's where it changes. We're in the last 4 bars of the tune now, and need to think about how we're going to end the tune. The last line uses a very standard ending sequence, which can be found in many jazz standards. It's a 1, 4, 3, 6, 2, 5, 1 progression, and all the chords last for only 2 beats. We start on chord 1, E flat major 7, and then move to chord 4, A flat major 7. Next up is chord 3, which is G minor 7, and the starting point of our descending 2 5s. G minor 7 takes us to C7, which leads us to chord 2, F minor 7. F minor 7 then takes us to chord 5, B flat 7, which resolves home to chord 1, E flat major 7. Great! Now do you notice anything strange about the C section? At the moment, we currently sit on chord 1, E flat major 7, from the 3rd bar to the 5th bar of the C section. To keep the harmony moving, this is where we have a tritone backdoor 2-5. Sounds a little tricky, but it's another clever harmonic device which is used in many other standards, such as Stella by Starlight. So as the name suggests, we move a tritone away from chord 1, which in our case is A, and this becomes the 2 in a minor 2-5. So A half diminished is the 2 chord, and D7 flat 9 is the 5 chord. You can now also see why it's a backdoor 2-5, as our D7 flat 9 chord resolves through the backdoor and upper semitone to chord 1, E flat major 7. This is a really common substitution and way to keep the harmony moving rather than stagnant. A quick tip: A half diminished is the same as playing an E flat major 7 root position voicing over an A, and a good shortcut for compers. So, there you have the harmony for the C section. Now let's hear how it sounds on the piano. Brilliant! And now for the melody. Just like the harmony, the melody begins the same way as the B section. We fall through the 5, 3, 2 and 1 of our A flat major 7 chord, before then rocking between the sharp 11 and 3rd of the D flat 7 chord. And then just like before, we fall through the 5, 3, 2 and 1 of our E flat major 7 chord, but here's where it changes, and we jump up to the major 7, D. The melody then ends with one long phrase that's easiest to think about in E flat major rather than chord specific. We fall from a scale note above to the 5th of our E flat major 7 chord before jumping up to the root. We then walk down through our E flat major scale back to our starting point, the 5th B flat, before jumping down to the root, E flat. We then jump back up to our B flat again before falling in thirds to the root. First, A flat to F, then G to E flat. There's also a cool little trick in the last line. Because the melody notes on our A flat chord are D and C, this doesn't explicitly outline a major 7 chord, so we can tweak our chord instead to A flat 7 sharp 11. Anyway, let's now hear how the C section melody sounds in time. Great, so that's the whole tune covered. I'd really recommend trying this one in a few keys, as it gets you really familiar with the different cadences within the major scale. Do like and subscribe below, and check out our Patreon page for PDF handouts for all our videos, plus other extras. Happy practicing!